So today we're going to look at using Citrix as a virtual machine to be able to test our work in IE8. This is really important because a lot of users throughout the world do not upgrade their browsers on a regular basis. It would be really nice if they did, but they don't. And so it's still important to be able to test in at least IE7 and IE8. If you're feeling adventurous and you want to try to test in IE6, that should give you a lot of good exercises in troubleshooting, but it's mostly dropped off the map as far as support, so you're fortunate if you don't have to test for it. The way that we're going to test our site today is to log into Citrix. You're going to go to citrix.cpcc.edu, and when you get there, you're going to need to enter your student ID and your password, and make sure between the two selections, I think CPCC is selected by default. You need to select lab, just like when you're in the computer lab. And when you log on, it's probably going to take a second, but it's going to load some virtual machines for you to choose from. Now you notice I just had a pop-up blocked there. That could be a problem for you. So if you've blocked pop-ups and it doesn't load properly, make sure that you check for that. Now if you've been using Citrix already, when you get to this page, the install button is really big and large. Now if you haven't been using Citrix, you're going to need to install some software to use it. But if you have, it could cause you some confusion because they really want you to click this. If you've already installed that software, you just need to skip to log on. And so that's what I'm going to do because I've got it installed already. Now when we get here, you should actually have 3 machines. I'm logged in under an account that doesn't have the same access because this account is not technically enrolled as a student in Web 140. But when you get there, you should have 3 different machines, one of which will offer you Adobe Creative Suite, and you should have these 2 as well. These are both good machines for testing and debugging your website. This one that runs Windows XP, I covered in another tutorial, it has IE7 installed on it. This one, Windows 7 with Office 2010, has IE8 installed on it. So this is great for both PC and Mac users to be able to test their website in these 2 older but very popular browsers. So what we're going to do is load our Windows 7 machine with Office 2010. It's probably going to launch in another window, and if you've blocked pop-ups it may not launch at all, so be aware of that. Mine's launching in the background here. We'll have to give it just a minute. It takes a little while to load, so what I'm going to do is pause the video and I'll restart once it's loaded. Alright, it has finally loaded, and I wanted to take a minute to show you this one prompt that you're going to get when you log in. It's going to ask you how you want to access files on this drive. What it's asking is, do we want to allow our computer to communicate with this computer in such that we could save files from the virtual machine to our computer or open files on our computer from the virtual machine. Really, when you're just testing, you don't have to do it, but I would at least give it read-only access. Read and write would be if you were working in Citrix on the Adobe Creative Suite and you wanted to save those native files to your computer, which is most definitely a good idea. But we're not really going to be saving any files in here. Now we're going to come down here to this IE icon and launch our browser, which will also take a couple of minutes. Anybody who's been working on Citrix is starting to learn one of the things about a virtual machine that's hosted remotely is that it is a little bit slow. You can install virtual machines on your own computer as well if you want to look into the process of doing that. They also run a little bit more slowly, but they're great to have for testing websites. And so, let's see. Now we've got IE8 loaded. We want to verify that this is actually IE8. So let's look around for an interface that would allow us to do that. See, we don't have the menu bar open, so why don't we see about that? There we go. The menu bar is helpful. Now what I did was to right-click and it shows you all of the different toolbars that you're seeing here. You can turn some of them off if you want to. So this is how you find them, though. You can set up custom menus. We probably won't get that much into customizing IE8 because we don't really want to use it any more than we have to, but let's check and make sure. And sure enough, we're looking at IE8. This is a really useful feature to have. So let's delve in and take a look at a website. I'm going to try to navigate to a sample student site that I've set up. I've done it in some of the other videos too. And just for the sake of showing you, I've put it into, I've put a nav bar in there from another project. But you can see it works kind of similar to the ones that we've been working on in class. Now, One thing I do want to point out about IE8 is that there's an extra little button up here to pay attention to. It's called Compatibility View Mode. When you're testing in IE8, it should hopefully default to not testing in compatibility mode. What compatibility mode is a function where IE8 attempts to behave like IE7, which sounds a little bit counterproductive, and that's because it is, but it was designed so that people who are viewing older websites that were optimized for IE7 in IE8 could get a good user experience from it. It's definitely a way to work backwards rather than just having compliant browsers, but that's what they chose to do. Now, in this case, you can see the reason I want you to be able to test is really specifically to do with your navigation bar. In both IE7 and IE8, I want you to make sure that those rollovers work and that you can use them. But you'll notice some other things about Internet Explorer that you may find frustrating. You might see some differences in your margins and your padding, for example. Little things like that. Now you can see here when I check compatibility mode on, I'm getting a little bit of extra padding up here. And that's really the only thing that's going on. Unfortunately, I kind of wish I had one that was a little more broken to show you, but you'll get a pretty good idea of what you need to fix pretty quickly when you start looking at things in IE7 and IE8. Anyway, this is just how to use Citrix to be able to test for both of those things. So between this one and the other tutorial about IE7, you should have the information that you need to be able to test your site and to make sure that everything's working appropriately. Now, if you don't see this compatibility view mode button, you do need to check something because you are checking a website that is behind the CPCC firewall since it's in your eLocker, and eLocker is hosted at CPCC. If you don't see that, make sure you come to your Tools menu here and go to your Compatibility View Settings. And in Compatibility View Settings, make sure that you remove any sites that are added in compatibility view, and also down here, if this is checked on, this display internet sites in compatibility view, that means anything that's hosted on CPCC servers will automatically display in compatibility view. I want you to turn this off because, again, if you view a website in IE8 with compatibility view mode turned on, it's basically the same as viewing it in IE7, and so you won't see a different experience testing IE7 versus IE8. So just make sure you do that. And then you should be able to see the difference between the two and hopefully be able to do a little bit of troubleshooting to make sure that your website looks good on even these older browsers. That's going to be important, not necessarily for your site, but possibly for some clients that you'll have. As far as your deliverables go for both testing in IE7 and IE8, I want you to take a screenshot that shows me the whole window and specifically the title bar up here. Because if I see the title bar, I'll know that you've been testing in Citrix because it shows me the name of the machine, and that name should be consistent with all of your screenshots. So make sure when you take your screenshot that you include that title bar so that I can see the Windows 7 with Office 2010 or the Windows XP with Office, I think 2007 or 2003, something like that. Take a shot of the whole thing so I can see your website, I can see IE8, and I can see that you're using the virtual machine. And then build a web page that shows all of those screenshots and lists all the errors that you're having, and you should be in pretty good shape. Anyway, you're in the home stretches now that you're debugging. You should have a complete website built nearly, and now you've just got to fine-tune it to make sure that as many people as possible have a good user experience. So good luck wrapping up your websites.